Okay, and I'm going to go in Inventor 2. And Inventor 2 is a little bit more sophisticated. I've got more functions. I'm going to hide this guy, maximize this window. I've got some new things here. You might be able to know this. Okay, we have a port A, and that's where that motor's plugged in. You shouldn't need to use that. You'll be able to use icons with the A right in the icon, so it knows what port it's plugged into. But we have this 5. Anybody know what this 5 means? What is this 5 right here? If you guessed that it was the power level for that motor, you're right. And we can now use these tags to set the power level on our motors if we need to. So at this point, I'm going to give myself a bunch of space to put a bunch of stuff in here. And I'm going to get rid of all this functions in between here. And now I'm going to start putting my functions in here. And I'm going to start putting my program in. When we look at this, I've got motor A forward, and then if I slide over here to the next one, motor A reverse. However, just because it says forward and reverse, if I want to go forward, I might use motor on port A and then motor on port C to go forward. But this combination, okay, does not necessarily mean that your robot will move forward. And that's important for you to figure out and know. And this is one of the things that you're going to have to tweak and manage in your own program specifically for your robot. Your robots are built differently. Your robots are wired differently. And so this might make your robot go backwards. This might make your robot turn. You're going to have to manage that on your own and figure that out. And there's a little logic game we'll have to play. To figure out what makes your robot go forward. And once you figure out what makes your robot go forward, then you can figure out what makes it go backwards and what will make it turn. But until you figure that out, we're going to assume that these forwards will in fact make our robot go forward. But again, that might not necessarily be true for your robot. We have a task. Our robot is supposed to push cans out of a circle. So when I hit the run button, I want it to go forward. Do I tell it to go forward for a certain amount of time? No, I want to know when we hit that black line. So I need that light sensor. Do I wait for brighter or wait for darker? I want to use wait for darker. It's a whiteboard, black line. I want to know when it hits that black line. So I'm going to put that light sensor in there. Here's an important thing. Port A, port C, where is this plugged in? You have to tell the program where the the light sensor is going to be plugged in. And I'm going to go, notice I've got submenus. I did this already. And I use that up arrow to go back. And now I'm going to click on the modifiers, input 2. It's going to be a different color. It's going to be green. It's going to be a green wire on there. And that's correct. Okay. Now, my instruction here is to go forward and go forward until we see something darker. That's the first step. We're going to move forward until we see something darker. And now I want it to go, when I hit that black line, what do I want it to do? I want to have my robot back up. I could make my robot turn, but let's assume it's pushing a can. If I hit that black line and then make it turn, it might rotate and then bring that can back into the circle with it, and that wouldn't be good. So we want to back up. And we want to back up into the middle of the board. So for here, I'm going to say, let's say my robot's a little slower, I'm going to say 2 seconds. You might want to be 1 second, you might be 2 seconds. It would be unlikely that your robot will need 4 or 6 seconds. It's unlikely that your robot will need more than 2 seconds to do anything. So you shouldn't be using timers more than 1 or 2. So I want it to back up for 2 seconds. And we're going to assume for the moment that it's going to back up for 2 seconds. After that 2 seconds, my robot's more or less in the middle of the board. And then I'm going to have my robot turn. If this makes me go forward, everything pointed to the right makes me go forward, everything pointed to the left, I guess this would be clockwise, makes me go backwards. What's going to make me turn? Well, either the motors are pointed at each other or pointed away from each other. So one clockwise and one counterclockwise will make me turn. Again, we're assuming that this is going to make me turn because this makes me go forward. Forwards, backwards, turn. And we need another timer. I'm just going to say 1 second right here. And at this point, I've got 3 steps. This is basically what your robot needs to do. Go forward until it sees the black line. Turn back up to the middle of the board. And then turn for 1 second. And then after it turns, we want it to go forward again to the black line. And then back up and turn. And do it again. Back up. Turn. excuse me. In programming, we take very simple pieces of programming and we just do it over and over again, and that turns into much more powerful piece of software. And in this case, do I need to copy everything and then paste it in over and over again? No, I don't need to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to create a loop to use the code that we've already put in over and over again. And we're going to do that. We're going to do arrows. We have a land and a jump. So where do I want to jump and where do I want to land? I want to jump at the end of my last step, and I want to land again at the beginning. Okay. So I'm going to go through. I'm going to start. I'm going to, the land is ignored when we come at it from the left. Go forward to the black line, back up to the middle, turn, and then I'm going to jump back to the beginning, forward to the black line, back up, turn. Okay, and I'm going to just keep cycling through this bit of code. And even though we're never going to get to the end of the program, you'll probably just stop your robot manually. We still need to tell the program where the end is, okay? And so we still have to have that red light, even though technically the program will never reach to it, because we're going to put in an endless loop here, okay? Now, here's a mistake I catch sometimes, and sometimes it's really befuddling what's going on. If you get these backwards, now I've got this jump. It's going to jump and bypass and then stop. Okay, so you got to watch. You got to make sure you get the jumps and lands in the right spot. I'm going to jump to the end, land, and then that's the end of the program. Oops, that's not what you want to do. You want to jump at the end and land back at the beginning to create the loop. So watch out for that. I did say we could slow stuff down, so I'm going to say we can slow down this turn. We're going to slow that down to a power of 3. You can just see, so you can see how I do that. And I'm going to wire these in to power level. Okay, and you want to adjust that and check that. I still have one more problem. If you recall, your robot needs to start outside of the circle. If your robot starts out of the circle and it's outside of the circle, you hit run, it's going to go forward until it sees that black line. Well, if it sees that black line, it's going to see that black line before it's even inside the circle, and then it's going to go back up and turn, and it's not even in the circle yet. So we need to tell our robot to go forward a little bit in order to get into the circle the first time. And this is not a piece of code we want to continue to use every time. I might be able to put a 1-second timer right here, but then that 1-second timer would be in the program every time around. And if we were starting in the middle of the board, 1 second going forward might put us outside of the circle, and we wouldn't want to do that. That's not to say that your robot can't leave the circle and then come back, but it's gonna be difficult for it to do that. We want to go forward a little bit the first time and then not worry about doing that ever again. And so we want to put in a little bit of code at the beginning outside of the loop. So I'm going to tell my robot to go forward for 1 second before the jump, or excuse me, before the land. And what that does is it gives me forward for 1 second. That puts my robot into the board, into the circle. And then we're running our code and we jump back. But because it's before the loop, it never runs that forward for 1 second again. Okay, so this is get us into the board first, and then the light sensor becomes active and we do our program the way we want to. Okay, so this is more or less what your program should look like. Some things I catch people doing, I catch people doing more than one light sensor. We only need to see that light sensor when it's going forward to the black line. We only need one light sensor in our program. You don't need more than that. Other mistakes I see people doing, 4 seconds, 6 seconds, 10 seconds. You don't need that much time for it to turn or to back up. That would be a little bit of a problem. Another mistake I see people doing, dialing their motors down too much. If you dial your motor down to a speed of power of 1 or power of 2, it might not be able to move. You might give not enough voltage for it to move your robot, and then what happens is that you hear like the straining of the motors trying to move your robot, but it can't, and then the RCX thinks that it doesn't have enough power, and it starts to beep and say, hey, I'm out of power. Well, you're not really. You just fooled your RCX into thinking it's out of power because you're not giving it enough voltage to the motors. So you want to watch out about dialing these back too much. You also want to watch it. You might have enough voltage to move your robot around, but what if it hits a can? Is it enough power to move a can? What if it gets 2 or 3 cans at once? Is that enough power to push those cans out? And it might not be. So you want to watch out for that. Again, with the save, you want to make sure you save as and save early. Okay, and I'm going to do demo 2 or we'll do demo 3, and I'll show you how to find this in a minute here. So I'm going to save this, and it's in level 2. And I haven't finished my program, but you guys can wire this. You know how to wire it. I've talked about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything I need to do. And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments, and maybe I can come back to them. I can also help during class. And yeah, good luck. And again, raise your hand. Do watch this video. Maybe if you want to watch it a couple of times to make sure you get everything before you start asking questions. The better you understand this on your own, the quicker you're going to be able to get it done, and move on to the next stage. So yeah, so I'm gonna get out of this. I'm gonna quit. Hit quit. And now when I go back into Robolab, I'm going to go to Programmer. If I hit Inventor 2 in My Programs, and here's my program right there, and if I double click on that, it's going to take me into my program right there. Okay, and good luck.